is not murder, as some fancy. The fighting and killing are not the essence of it, but are the accidents, though the inseparable accidents. And even these are mainly purged of savagery and transfigured into devotion. War is not murder, but sacrifice, which is the soul of Christianity.
The most valuable thing for an army is not quantity, but quality. Britain's defences are already safeguarded by its enormous, growing and costly navy. Compulsion is foreign to the British nation, to the British character, and to the genius of our people.
Shore Camp, Cleethorpes, June 24th, 1917. My dear mother and sister, this is the best stuff I can find to write what may be my last letter. James Brightmore was a solicitor's clerk from Manchester. He was also a conscientious objector.
You've already served 8 months in prison for disobeying orders, and as you show no sign of ceasing your pointless protest, I'm now going to sentence you to solitary confinement. Yes, Corporal. What do you mean there's no cell available? Well then, find somewhere else. Dig a pit, if necessary.
The evening before war is declared, I find myself walking the streets of London, noticing the cheering crowds, making myself sensitive to the emotions of passers-by. I have always imagined what most pacifists contend, that wars are forced upon a reluctant population by despotic and Machiavellian governments. But during this and the following days, I discovered to my amazement that the average man and woman is delighted at the prospect of war.
What will be the consequences of such a policy for himself? If he refuses to fight or support measures of defence, it's possible he may be shot by the authorities as guilty of treason. Very well, he says. Rather than kill a German lad with whom he has no conceivable quarrel, he is prepared to be shot himself.
But, Annie, how, my love? You were very brave to say those things in your sermon, but who gave you that white feather? You're not a coward. You're standing up for what you believe in, Bert. That's brave.
One Tory backbencher after another rises to put what they believe is the irrefutable case for conscription.
Conscription is justified, not only by the pressing necessity of having more men, but on the better and higher ground of equality of service. Sure, the working classes would far prefer universal service to a voluntary system, under which it is only the willing horse who goes, while the loafers and shirkers stay at home. Sure. And to set an example, those who are wealthy should make the ultimate sacrifice for king and country of giving up the luxury of motor travel and immediately sending their chauffeurs into the army.
Imagine them both on a bench by the pond. Russell just in a towel, soaking up the sun after his swim. The Prime Minister, a keen golfer, in +4s, not having changed for supper yet. I'm made to feel like a traitor. The older dons getting more hysterical by the day, avoiding me at high table, as if I'm the sole reason the war hasn't been won yet. Do you have a match? This pipe's going out.
I don't, I'm afraid.
Believe me, Prime Minister, I desire the defeat of Germany as ardently as any retired colonel. Love of England is very nearly the strongest emotion I possess, and having to set it aside at this time, well, it's not an easy thing to renounce, I can tell you, but I've no choice. We shouldn't be at war.
By Christmas 1915, the British casualty toll is 528,227. On December the 27th and December the 28th, the Cabinet meets to discuss the crisis. And at the start of the new year, on January the 5th, 1916, the Prime Minister rises to address the House.
I beg that leave be given to introduce a bill with respect to military service in connection with the present war. There will, however, be provision made for exemption in certain specific cases, such exemption being applied for to the applicant's local tribunal. One such exemption being on the ground of a conscientious objection to bearing arms. Shame!
If they're fit, they shouldn't be exempted. Shame! Shame!
I am ready to die for my principles. I am standing up for freedom of conscience of all Englishmen. I cannot bring evidence to prove my conscientious objection. The only way to prove it is to be ready to suffer for it and, if necessary, die for it. You can send me where you will, even into the front line trenches, but you will never, never get me to raise my hand against my fellow man.
Right, Private Brocklesby. Here's a bucket of potatoes and a knife. Now get peeling.
May I ask who they're for?
Beg pardon?
The potatoes. Who are they for?
They're for the officers and soldiers. Who do you think they're for?
Then I can't peel them, I'm afraid. I'll peel potatoes for conscientious objectors, but not for officers and soldiers.
We're not asking you to kill anybody, Brocklesby. We're asking you to get our supper ready.
On one occasion, he was stripped naked, had a rope tightly fastened round his abdomen, and was then dragged to a filthy pond in the campgrounds, into which he was pushed forcibly and entirely immersed 8 or 9 times in succession, and dragged out each time by a rope. The pond contained sewage.
My dear mother and sister, I am now confined in a pit which started at the surface at 3 feet by 2 and tapers off to 2 feet 6 inches by 15 inches. The bottom is full of water, and I have to stand on 2 strips of wood all day long, just above the waterline. The sun beats down, and through the long day, there are only the walls of clay to look at. I wish I could see your letters. I could be reassured or know your wishes. As it is, I feel sentenced to death.
Mr. Brocklesby, I have to ask you to come with me now.
Bert, you won't be shot, will you? Shot? Of course I
Mr.
won't be shot.
Brocklesby!
Disobedience is only punishable by shooting if it happens on active service in France. Oh God, please don't let them shoot you, Bert. Please. Please.
Look! I've had about as much as I can stand of you and your fucking conscience. You won't take up a rifle to fight the fucking Germans, and you won't take up a knife to peel some fucking spuds. What will you fucking do?
Nothing that promotes the war effort, I'm afraid. Please, don't hit me. Nothing will be achieved, but... Oh! Private Brocklesby, I have some news for you. I've just received orders to send you and your chums to France. France? Can I let my family know I'm going, sir? I'm afraid not. There isn't time. Let me make one thing clear. Whether you like it or not, you men are here in France as part of the non-combatant corps. You won't be going anywhere near the front, but you are now deemed to be on active service. Which means that if you keep up your course of disobedience and insubordination, you will be subjected to a court-martial, where, should you be found guilty, the maximum penalty will be applied. What we've got to decide before we go back to camp is whether we're prepared to call his bluff. Whether we're prepared to take this all the way to the last ditch. You can see why it's more commonly known as crucifixion. It's actually a form of torture, especially in the case of the shorter men, who are virtually hanging by the wrists. To make matters less comfortable, it begins to rain, and a cold wind blows straight across the top of the hill. 35 of us are now court-martialed, found guilty, and sent to punishment barracks to await our sentences.
If! It's not if! Why haven't you shown the postcard, Catherine? They're there, Prime Minister. They're there, in Boulogne, refusing to obey orders as we speak, perhaps being court-martialed as we speak, possibly being sentenced to death even as we speak.
John Hubert Brocklesby of the 2nd Eastern Company, Non-Combatant Corps. You have been charged with persistent refusal to obey orders while on active service in France. You have been tried by a field general court-martial and have been found guilty.